Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first LGMA webinar towards COP26, first of its series in 2020. My name is Yunus Arikan. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy at ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. I'm also performing the duty of the focal point of local governments and municipal authorities constituency on behalf of Global Task Force as well. Today, we will be running through around maximum 1 hour of a session that will primarily focus on the catch up with the COP25 outcomes and latest updates from COP26 presidency. We will track what has been the progress over the past couple of weeks, and then we will have a basic review of the agenda in the weeks and months ahead. Just to recap, this webinar is recorded and it will be also made online after the webinar is over. It will be uploaded on YouTube as well as the PowerPoint as well. You will receive it. During the webinar, we usually prefer to keep all the participants on mute. And meanwhile, you can write your questions if you would like to interact immediately, or raise your hand so that once the presentation is over, we can get back to it. We have usually around 20 minutes of a discussion depending on the agenda and the participants' interests. Today, I'm delighted to have the participation of my colleague Jordan Harris from the COP25 Presidency subnational team. Jordan, I assume you're online?
Yes, I'm here, Yunus. Hello.
Great, thank you very much, Jordan. So we are really happy to have the opportunity to catch up with Jordan, and through this opportunity, I'd like to once again express very warm regards to his support through the COP25 and at COP25, on the way to and at COP25, as the key focal point for the subnational authorities, and really it was a pleasure to work with Jordan, and I think we really enjoyed as a constituency our outcomes, and our synergy was really very helpful and very fruitful. I hope we will continue on the next couple of months ahead, and I hope we will have a nice handover to the COP26 president as well. Jordan, if you agree, I can go through my slides first, and then we can hand over to you so that you can highlight the updates from the COP25 presidency at the local, national, regional, or global level. Does this sound okay for you?
Yeah, that's fine. Perfect.
Excellent. So let's start. In terms of what did we achieve in COP25 at COP25, of course there are several decisions, and the highlights we can review as below. First of all, there is the famous decision 1 CP25, which is the main outcome, which of course was disappointing for many, including LGMA community, that there were no specific text for raising ambition. Without such a language, of course, the NDC process is still a nationally driven process, but without such a guidance from the UNFCCC, obviously, the expectations are in the sense that it will be much harder to mobilize the national processes. Nevertheless, there will be still a number of initiatives. We will touch upon it on that front. So basically, there is no guidance from COP25 on raising ambition. However, this doesn't mean that there's no legitimate requirement or legitimacy in pushing further. In fact, at Katowice, in Katowice in 2018, there is already a paragraph 37 of the decision 1 CP24, which is the text related to Katowice outcome, that it says particularly that it invites parties to enhance their NDCs through the experience of the Talanoa dialogues. If you can remember, Talanoa dialogues was a huge mobilization in 2018, which was really bringing Paris Agreement to the grassroots, to the city level, to subnational level, regional level, and it was a huge opportunity to have this multi-level dialogue with the national governments. And we, as local and regional governments, enjoyed a lot the Solano dialogue process, and we're still bearing the fruits. So, in the worst case, we have such a legal, let's say, background that justifies why we should be pushing still for national governments to be more inclusive for local and regional governments, both in the current implementation but also in the raising the ambition of their existing ones. There is the decision also refers to the welcoming of the 2019 UN Climate Action Summit and its initiatives, but more importantly, it also expresses gratitude to COP25 presidency in convening ministerials on energy, agriculture, finance, and science. This is important in the sense that the climate negotiations are primarily in the domain of ministers of environment or ministers of climate change in some cases. Um, Other ministers are not necessarily the primary focal point or not responsible for the climate policies or action. But of course, whatever they do or they don't to impact the success of climate goals. And it has been a, let's say, practice for the past 10 years or so that every host country is trying to do their best to reach the additional ministries. In most cases, it started with energy and finance, but lately there was additional effort. So in the case of COP25, Chilean presidency had reached out to ministers of energy, agriculture, finance, and science. Obviously, each of them had a different modality, different scope. There were even a certain point, an invitation to ministers of transport, but because of the change of the venue, this was, let's say, postponed. But of course, the outcomes, of course, is discussed, or the process, or the events are convened with this relevant ministries. And the importance for us is that for COP26 in Glasgow, we would wish that there will be a gathering of the ministers of urbanization so that they can also bring additional value to the debate on inclusive and collaborative climate action, especially with taking into account sustainable urban development as a core driving force for raising ambition. Therefore, this is good that such efforts are praised by parties. So this could be a motivation for COP26 as well. Um, there is a decision from Madrid COP25 that there will be a special session on land and ocean during the 52nd session of the sub-Saharas in June in Bonn, and the parties and non-parties are invited to send their comments by 31st of March. A very important outcome is that the Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action is extended until 2025. This was very, very valuable. As ICLEI, we have been involved in this process since its concept inception. We had contributed to its success. And it was a vision for us that this should not be limited to until 2020. So the decision here at COP25 and made sure the process of acting with champions and this inclusive dialogues will continue in days and years ahead. But of course, depending on the outcome of COP26, there may be certain revisions and already processes starting in terms of some workshops and some dialogues are being conducted. Um, One of the most important agenda item, Article 6, market and non-market approach, has not reached to a conclusion. That was another point of disappointment. There will be further discussions in the UK COP26. Obviously, COP26 in the hands of UK, having a reference on Article 6 is an important, let's say, opportunity because UK has been the birthplace of many instruments, mechanisms of climate flexibility mechanisms, emissions trading, or other type of finance-related initiatives. So at least in the market-based approach part of the Article 6 negotiations, having a COP26 presidency in the hands of the UK could be something that could trigger the process outcomes much more robust manner. We have been expecting that there will be a recognition to the report of the Forum of Standing Committee on Finance on Sustainable Cities. That is also for us at this stage a bit procedural because it didn't create any action as such, but we know when this forum was convened in September, 2 weeks later there was the UN Climate Action Summit. We had numerous outcomes like a gap fund by the German Minister of Environment and Minister of Development and many other partners, GCOM as well. There was again another initiative of LUCI, Leadership on Urban Climate Investments. There was a revision of climate cities and climate finance leadership alliance. So a number of tools and mechanisms are now in place. So this report now is much more giving us also the legal and political support. Therefore, in 2020, we could be much more positive, or we could be much more ambitious in terms of putting all these new mechanisms into action and making sure subnational finance is advanced, or climate finance is localized to the needs of the cities and regions. These are the official COP25 decisions. In terms of outcomes, we should highlight the COP25 Climate Ambition Alliance. This was a process driven by Chilean Presidency on the way to Climate Action Summit in September, which was kicked off with an initial list of countries. But at COP, this number of countries reached around 70. The number of cities and regions have surpassed more than 400. These are all positive signals that regardless of the negotiations, in fact, many stakeholders, including national, local, and regional governments, are in fact on the way to transition for a low carbon economy. And we hope this will be also reflected in the indices. In this new announcement and the end of COP, ICLEI was also introduced as one of the partners, which, and particularly in the cities track. And we are also invited, or we are also collaborating now with the COP25 Presidency and the UNF Secretariat to develop a spatial guidance, or a certain guidance that could define climate neutrality criteria for cities and regions. And this year we would like to make sure that this study is shared widely, endorsed widely, and that the list of cities and regions in this 400 and more, when they announce their climate neutrality, they could be much more transparent in terms of how they will reach to these goals and how exactly what they mean, what is their understanding. The last point is that in addition to Ambition Alliance, several countries and the parts of the NDC partnership has already signed up their partnership with several international institutions in terms of enhancing their NDCs, either more robust implementation or bringing a new revised or more ambitious NDCs at COP. And ICLEI was the only local government network involved in the process. And we know there's a number of tracks, a number of countries who are focusing on urban areas, and ICLEI will be working with 4 of them. So these are the main highlights of COP25 in terms of official outcomes. So when it comes to the where are we today? This is an adapted version of the previous slides we used in the past webinars. We all know that the host of the last COP continues to safeguard the process from a political perspective, but the incoming presidency also starts to mobilize itself through delegations, through priorities, and through certain expectations. In that case, from presidential side, from COP25 side, there's no change in the Chilean government. Minister of Environment, Ms. Carolina Schmidt, is continuing her task. Same goes to Gonzalo Munoz, the high-level champion. However, we have several updates. UK government has announced a new president designate. This is now the Secretary of State of Business, Energy, and Industrial Sectors. Right Honorable Alok Sharma will be the president of the UK presidency. Obviously, this will be appointed by the time COP starts. But at least now we have a COP president. If you can recall, in Madrid, UK presidency was led by Claire O'Neill. We really had benefit her leadership in Madrid, and we look forward to continuing with Mr. Alok Sharma as well, His Excellency. Meanwhile, the counterpart of the Gonzalo Munoz from the champion side in the UK delegation is also clear now. Mr. Nigel Topping, he's well known in the community of cities and business as the leader of Europe in the leadership of CDP and women business. So we also are very excited to have Nigel in having his real engagement in the process. There is an additional unique step from the UK presidency. Mark Carney, the former governor of Bank of England, but who is also serving as the UN Secretary General's Climate Finance Advisor, is also appointed as a climate finance advisor to the COP26 presidency. That is showing how important this agenda will be during the COP26 and on the way to and at COP26. We always try to map our priorities and mechanisms. We have traditional processes like summits, showcasing, and engaging in the workshops, in the consultations, but also contribute in the decision making. These are regular, and each of the year, every year, this is designed according to the unique conditions of the host city or the host country. For the multinational, for COP26 in particular, in terms of thematic wise, we are guided, or we are following our roadmap that was announced at COP25. It has 6 main elements. This is mainly a vision to make the COP in Glasgow as a multi-level action COP, which would happen for the first time, but it will fully reflect the spirit of Paris Agreement and the new realities. What does this roadmap include? It concludes one first element, of course, to raise ambition, that more cities and regions should adopt for climate neutrality and emergency targets. Their contributions should be recognized in the NDCs, so vertical integration of NDCs and transparency is essential. We have to advance on financing so that the instruments we have developed in 2009 is put in force. Obviously, as you have seen in the case of disasters in Australia, there will be more adaptation needs, so mitigation and adaptation should be going hand in hand. As we have enjoyed a lot in the COP25 under the leadership of COP25 presidency, there was a huge discussion on circular economy and nature. We would like to continue, in particular this year. There will be more discussions on linking biodiversity and climate with reference to the super year for nature, which includes a COP in Kunming, which will cover up later on. And finally, amplify global climate action. This is aiming to extend the global climate action agenda, not necessarily to typical mitigation focused sectors like transport, agriculture, energy, but also urbanization, education, youth, family, arts, culture, all type of governments, and all sectors of government, all sectors of society should be involved. And the more we diversify the engagement of different ministries, the more we would feel the power of that transformation is happening, and then NDCs and the global climate process should embark in this into the official process. What happened since then? We have seen a very good example in WUF at the World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi. There was a special session on urban culture and climate action. This was the first time we, in fact, have tested our roadmap as such. And in this regard, there was a clear call for the urbanization ministers to consider to plan ahead so that they can participate at the Glasgow COP26 and possibly have an urbanization ministerial, just like other ministers of agriculture, finance, and energy had done in the previous years. It seems there will be a good way of convincing, but there's a lot of work to do, of course. From the informal discussion, we have received positive results. But more importantly, just before the WUF starts, we had received a very powerful message from COP25 presidency. Minister Schmidt personally sent a letter to Maimuna Sharif, UN Habitat Executive Director, that clearly states the linkage between urban and climate agendas. I think this is one of the few or one of the most highest level actions that has taken place over the past weeks. So we are proud that LGMA constituency has played an important role in this process. We are grateful for the leadership of continued leadership of COP25 Chile presidency. We look forward to a positive reaction from UN Habitat in the next days, and we'd like to use this as a strengthening element for our agenda in Glasgow. in terms of additional outcomes, we have just heard during COP there was an announcement from the German Minister of Environment. The Partnership for Collaborative Climate Action was kicked off officially through its web page, and that this was a legacy of the ICA conference in Heidelberg, and the partnership that engaged a number of national governments, regional governments, local governments, and institutions and networks is now clearly on stage. It is an actor in the process. We believe this will be a game changer in the way that LGMA constituency is also interacting in the UNFCCC process, and this partnership has already started its contributions to the global efforts. For example, the first webinar was held in terms of NDC ambition and collaborative climate action. You may have heard yesterday, CDP has released its A list in terms of ambitious cities who have been reporting in their reporting cycles over these years. This also supports the announcement of ICLEI in a list of 400 cities and regions which are considered as pioneers of climate ambition, which is categorized under adoption of climate neutrality declarations, climate neutrality targets, commitment to 100% renewables, and divesting from fossil fuels, which is around 400 cities. So all these new information from cities around the world is helping us to demonstrate that at local level we're advancing. Here we have compiled now, according to our assessment, we are thinking about around 100 events year-round that will be relevant for LGMA constituency, be it our own networking events, be it UN negotiations, or be it processes outside the negotiations. So we have categorized all these into 5 main headings, and out of this we think there are around 32 of them that is really very important throughout the year, which may be seen as milestones. These include 4 events hosted by LGMA constituency. These are the ones that are like in March Covenant of Mayors ceremony, Daring Cities in Bonn. We will touch upon that. Urban 20 Riyadh Summit in September, and European Sustainable Cities and Towns Congress in Mannheim, again on the same date. Then we will have 11 sessions of UNFCCC and CBD negotiations. In terms of the UNFCCC, the climate negotiations, we have regional climate weeks, and this year it is even more in number. There is an additional climate week in Middle East and North Africa. It will start with Uganda in April, and in summertime it will be in Latin America, in Dominican Republic, and Asia Pacific to be defined. We have pre-COP in Italy. The date is also confirmed, 1st and 2nd. Obviously, we have the June sessions in Bonn, and we have the climate in Glasgow. But in terms of the biodiversity negotiations, next week there will be the second round of the post-2020 negotiations. This will be followed by the third round in July in Colombia. Meanwhile, in Edinburgh, in April, there will be a specific workshop on subnational governments and their role in the CBD process. And the real COP of biodiversity will be in October in Kunming, China. In terms of European and global process, this is important because there are huge expectations from the European Commission to be launching their vision for and they have already launched it, but that it's adopted by Council and the Parliament for 2030 and 2050. Therefore, Environment Council meetings in March and June are important. This year, Commonwealth Head of Government meeting is also very important. It will be held in Kigali, Rwanda in June. One of the very important points is that there are 2 important points. That the first one is that traditionally UK is very active in Commonwealth, as we all know, and because of the UK presidency, this year's Commonwealth could be much more effective. And one of the other reasons is that this year G20 is very late in the year. G20 Heads of State Summit is end of November, when most of the agendas are concluded. Therefore, heads of state level G20 is not that much important from our point of view. But there's one important element of G20, and this is that for the first time in the history of G20, there is a ministerial of environment ministers. This will be held in mid-September. This is for us is very important because these ministers will be the one who would go to Kunming, China, and to COP. So this will be the last opportunity for us to insert some pressure into the G20 and community on particular NDCs. And EU-China summit this year will also be very unique in October in Leipzig. Everybody is expecting that these two big blocks or big players in terms of their size and capacities, if they signal that they're also elevating their ambition, this will be much more giving confidence for the success of COP26. We all know that there are around 100 countries who had already expressed some targets, but relatively these are smaller in size. So EU and China are the main drivers, so we will look forward to their outcomes. This year, there are not too many UN events, but the several ones are important. Of course, we started with World Urban Forum. There is a global sustainable transport conference in Beijing in May. We'll have to check how this will be convened, taking into account the coronavirus epidemic. In At the beginning of June and at the same week of the first week of the UN climate negotiations, we have Ocean Conference in Lisbon. This will also be a unique opportunity for blue economy, which was also a priority for COP25 Chilean Presidency. In June, on the 9th, there will be a special event of the UN President of the General Assembly on draft and desertification. That may also be a very powerful moment. And in September, we are expecting to have both the Nature Summit and as well as a follow-up for the Climate Action Summit. So these are throughout the year there will be 6 observance days, especially this year, 22nd of April. Earth Day will be a remarkable moment because we are celebrating the 50th anniversary. This will be a global celebration and it's a global event to invite all stakeholders to express more and more ambition in terms of climate and nature action. There will be also a reference to International Biodiversity Day on the 22nd of May. World Environment Day will be on the 5th of June to be celebrated in Colombia with the theme on biodiversity. That is very logical in terms of connecting the climate and biodiversity agenda. On the same day in Bonn, we will also celebrate the Pastoral Day, which is 250th anniversary. This process is particularly aiming to connect nature, music, art, and climate action. So that will be celebrated in Bonn and many other cities around the world. We will have the Combating Desertification celebrated in South Korea. And in October, we will have World Habitat Day and Cities Day. One of them is in Malaysia, but I'm not sure about the other one. So these 32 events are the majors, of course, throughout the year. However, we all know this is not all that we have. Throughout this next slides, you will see we have a list of around 100 events which we believe will provide significant inputs to the success of COP26. So we commend all our partners who are involved in these processes, and we will continue to provide updates in terms of the dates and venues and outcomes so that we can make sure we have a very ambitious track. This year, June is particularly very busy. So many events taking place one after each other, so we have to make sure they are well coordinated or synergized. That will be a challenge for all of us. Relatively speaking, July and December, the number of events are much less. This gives chance that the national stakeholders can focus on their own activities. And we also know throughout the year there will be numerous moments, like in England and Wales there will be local elections on the 7th of May. On the 15th of March, first round of French municipal elections will be happening. In Germany, in Hamburg, North Rhine-Westphalia, Bayern, several regional and local elections will be held. The same goes Brazil in October. So this will, of course, also shape the domestic agendas worldwide, and obviously the most important, or let's say one of the most interesting moment would be the election in the US, which will be primarily a presidential election, but at the same time there will be several regional and local elections as well. So that's our agenda. And last words, maybe you have heard that there is an initiative from City of Bonn and ICLEI to convene the Daring Cities 2020 as the new wave of annual gathering, overlapping with the UN climate conferences. This Daring Cities is particularly aiming for as acting as a forum for urban leaders taking on the climate emergency. We believe this is really the moment we have to seize and make sure both our commitments are delivered, but also this inspire the national governments as well. In terms of specific days, on the 3rd of June, we will have a half a day session, or at least we will wish to have a half a day session. This will be a replication of the event we had last year with COP24 Presidency. It will be a special joint session on multi-level action. On the 5th, we will have a lunchtime event, a high-level event on arts, music, and culture. And on the 5th of June evening, there will be a Beethoven Pastoral Symphony as the closing ceremony of the Beethoven Pastoral Project in 2020. Um, with this, I am delighted to give the floor to Jordan. Um, Jordan, would you like to share any slides? Shall we share the screen to you? How do you wish? You can also just speak if you want.
Sure. Yes, I have some slides. I'll be very brief, but I did prepare some slides just to provide a little visual guidance.
Oh,
So let me know
Julia, are you there?
when.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Jordan, you
Can,
should have received the notification. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, can you
Yes, we
see
see it very
this?
well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let me put this down here. Okay, well, hello, Yunus, and to everyone. Thank you very much yet again for the opportunity to be able to participate in these valuable LGMA webinars, to talk a little bit about what is on the agenda this year from the side of the COP25 presidency, in this transitionary stage into kind of collaborative work between the COP25 and the incoming COP26 presidency, to be able to provide continuity for some of the progress that has been made, as Yunus has already highlighted, some of the work that that we were able to achieve throughout last year and culminating in the COP25 in Madrid. So just to kind of start off, the general vision of the Chilean COP25 presidency in terms of subnational governments is to assure that there is a renewed relevance in the context of the Chilean presidency, to work with local governments and local government networks, both in Chile, throughout the region of Latin America, and also from around the world, in order to unite efforts to strengthen capacities for NDC implementation and raising ambition to meet Paris targets. And in that effort, we've aligned quite nicely with LGMA constituency through very close collaboration with Yunus and LGMA. We were also very happy to be able to have this kind of collaborative work throughout last year that culminated with several landmark moments during the COP25. And we hope to be able to continue to work together with you, Yunus, and with all of the networks that are involved in the LGMA constituency, in order to assure throughout the first half, especially of this year, that there's a continuity of the work that we've been doing, and a smooth transition into the COP26 team, which I understand is currently being established, in order to assure that we can provide the COP26 in Glasgow with this multi-level action focus. So Yunus already went through this, but maybe one of the primary kind of outputs or results, products of the COP25 was this kind of global roadmap towards COP26, which was a collaborative effort between the LGMA constituency and all of its member networks, along with the COP25 presidency, which outlines these 6 kind of pillars of work to be able to make progress throughout 2020, which Yunus already went into in detail, so I don't think I need to go into too much detail on that. From the side of the COP25 presidency, on this global scale, we're trying to put together right now kind of some general global objectives for the work that we would like to continue to do throughout this year of 2020. So we will be working together with the Secretariat of the Convention in terms of defining the criteria for joining the Climate Ambition Alliance, which, as Yunus mentioned, was probably the main outfit as far as non-state and subnational actors, was the formation and the relaunching of this Climate Ambition Alliance, which calls on local and regional governments, companies, and investors from around the world to take on science-based carbon neutrality targets from now until 2050. So we will be working very closely with the Secretariat in order to assure that the criteria of for neutrality in terms of what we, how we understand carbon neutrality for local and regional governments is very clearly outlined, so that we can also move on to the second point there, to work on a monitoring mechanism. This is a point of interest that there have already been some initial discussions between the COP25 and COP26 presidencies and the Secretariat in order to work on what could end up being a monitoring mechanism for the actions of non-state and subnational actors, in order to monitor the progress within the context of the Climate Ambition Alliance, whether or not that would be, for example, integrated into the Nazca platform, or whether we could perhaps envision together with the COP26 presidency some kind of additional platform for this monitoring process. That's another objective that we have on this global scale. We also would like to obviously constitute a very close working relationship with the incoming UK COP26 presidency, and continuing the relationship that we have with the LGMA constituency, as I had said before, in order to assure this transition, and also to kind of define together what a multi-level action COP26 might look like. As I'll go into a little bit later, there is actually at the end of this week and beginning of next week, there will be some initial meetings in London between the COP25 and COP26 presidency teams, in order to talk about this kind of a strategic outlook about how to define what the COP26 will define as its priority areas, and the COP25 will obviously provide inputs. And among these inputs, we will definitely be highlighting the progress that has been made on subnational governments, the roadmap that was launched in the COP25, and the importance of continuing on towards this multi-level action approach on into the COP26 in Glasgow. We will obviously, as best as we can and to the best of our ability, try to continue being a presence and monitoring progress throughout various events in the international spaces. Yunus mentioned, for example, the letter of endorsement that was sent by Minister Schmidt, the COP25 president, to the UN Habitat Executive Director in the context of the World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi. We've observed that in the past years there has been a growing connection between the space of the COP and the World Urban Forums, and so from the COP25 presidency, we definitely wanted to provide a space for continuing collaboration between these two spaces. And I'll go into more of, Yunus already mentioned the most important kind of landmark moments that will be happening throughout the year, of which there are many. So I will also point out some of the priority events that as a COP25 presidency we will be participating in. And obviously a lot of our work will be based on expanding the Climate Ambition Alliance, both in Chile, in Latin America, and from around the world, in order to foment more adhesion by local governments and regional governments to take on this carbon neutrality commitment. So the Climate Ambition Alliance has already been integrated kind of as an overarching action within the Nazca platform. So that means if you go to the Nazca platform now, you can find the Climate Ambition Alliance, and below here, where you see the general description and the objectives, is the list of all the local, regional governments and companies that have signed on already to the Climate Ambition Alliance. So again, we hope to be able to work together with the Secretariat and COP26 presidency and the CAMDA in order to explore further opportunities for using the Nazca platform as a monitoring mechanism for the progress it's made in the Climate Ambition Alliance. We also will be working strongly on a Latin American scale. We want to continue to kind of work with our partners here in the region, which are under the umbrella of the Global Covenant of Mayors. All of the various local government networks in Latin America, including ICLEI, C40, CC35, Mercosudades, FLACMA, in order to continue to coordinate from a leadership perspective the various events that will be occurring throughout the region throughout the year, to make progress on what I will show you coming up was another product of the COP25, which was the launch of a global or regional action agenda for local governments in Latin America. In that context, we will be organizing specifically an event in Santiago in May of this year in order to follow up on that action agenda here in Santiago in Chile, in order to kind of make a work plan for what we could present during the Climate Change Week of Latin America, which will take place in Santo Domingo this year in July, and also what we could look forward to presenting as progress in Glasgow at COP26 in November. We would also represent the work that's being done internally here in Chile. In Chile, we're developing a subnational agenda for climate change. We're going to be rolling out a series of activities throughout all of the regions of Chile in order to make this a very participatory process, also in the context of the formation of Chile's long-term climate change strategy, which is taking place this year. We're also making sure that local populations and local governments have a voice in that process. So we will also want to represent kind of this process and methodology that we're developing in Chile in these events on a regional scale in Latin America as a form of best practices. And also, as on a global scale, urge and support local governments throughout the region to sign on to the carbon neutrality commitments and therefore also be able to join the Climate Ambition Alliance. As I had mentioned, along with the global kind of roadmap, there was also a similar process that took place on a regional scale that was supported by the COP25 presidency in Latin America throughout last year and culminated in the presentation of this climate action agenda for local governments of Latin America and the Caribbean 2020 and beyond during an event in the Euroclima Pavilion in Madrid. And this is kind of a process and a product that mirrored what occurred on a global scale. So we collaborated together with, as I mentioned before, all of these local government networks that are active in Latin America, including FLACMA and the Chilean representation, the Chilean Association of Municipalities. The FLACMA is also the regional body representing UCLG in the region. C40s in South America, ICLEI in South America, Mercosudades, and the CC35 network, along all of this under kind of the umbrella of the steering committee of the Global Covenant for Mayors for Climate and Energy in Latin America, resulted in these 5 pillars of action for 2020 and beyond. So we will be looking to foment this kind of move from climate commitments to climate emergency, taken on by local governments within Latin America, vertical integration in the formulation of NDCs and other climate policies in the region. So we want to see a higher level of local government and regional government participation in the formation and the reformation of NDCs and other climate policies in the region. There's a line of action for improved financial flows, finding new and innovative funding mechanisms in order to support local transformative and integrated climate action. So this means working with not only multilateral donor and lending organizations, but also internally in countries, working on public-private partnerships and kind of innovative forms of financing local climate action. Also working on local nature and people-based planning for carbon neutrality and climate resilience and adaptation. So we want to definitely focus on the local planning and development plans that exist within countries on a local scale in order to integrate carbon neutrality, climate resilience, and adaptation, taking on this nexus between nature and people, right? Nature and society, kind of throughout this nature-based solutions, and in the context, right, of this very strong focus on nature this year in the context of the UN action, the UN Summit on Nature in New York, as well as the COP15 summit in Kunming. And also, finally, integration of local decarbonization and climate resilience strategies with other development strategies, with a focus on just transition that include new job opportunities in the context of a circular green local economy, and the empowerment of youth and young generations in order to facilitate their involvement and work on climate change throughout the region. So that's kind of the regional Latin American agenda that was developed collaboratively throughout last year, and which we will be pushing throughout several events that will occur this year. So this is a little map of those events. Regionally is in the center are kind of the landmark events, and then around that we also are highlighting some of the more significant global events that we'll be participating in. This is an initial list. Obviously, this will probably grow as time goes on. But on the regional level, we'll start out in March with a couple of very important events. One is the Summit of the Americas, organized by CC35, an event which will take place here in Santiago in the month of March, which will bring together local authorities from the capital cities throughout the region in order to launch this initiative by the CC35 network to support climate actions in these capital cities. At the same time, towards the end of March, will be the 13th Hemispheric Summit of Mayors and Local Governments of FLACMA, which will take place in Recife in Brazil. This has been an interesting space. Last year, it was kind of the kickoff space for this planning process that occurred throughout the last year, culminating in the regional roadmap. So we hope to be able to kind of use this space again through our connection with the Chilean Association of Municipalities in order to foment this process on the road to Glasgow. Then we'll come back to Santiago in May for a post-COP25 local authority and local government network forum in Santiago, bringing together the actors that were involved in this process last year and who had participated in the COP25 in Madrid in order to formulate a more specific strategy or action plan that can take us to the Regional Climate Change Week and also to Glasgow at the end of the year. Because the Regional Climate Change Week will take place in July in Santo Domingo. So that's going to be a major event for the region where we hope to be able to provide some progress that has been made halfway through the year in terms of actions that have been implemented, additional cities and regional governments that have taken on climate neutrality commitments and other commitments and actions in line with the pillars on the regional level and the regional roadmap. And also in September, we expect a meeting of the steering committee of the Global Covenant of Mayors. This is yet to be confirmed, but this is generally a yearly event in which all of these regional networks of local governments also gather in order to kind of make a last push of organizational effort before the final COP conference at the end of the year. Surrounding these regional events, right, we have right now, as I had mentioned, at the end of this week and the beginning of next week, we have a COP26 strategic meeting for vision and ambition for climate action in Steyning in the United Kingdom, south of London. So this will be happening Thursday and Friday of this week, where it will be an initial strategic meeting between COP25 and COP26 presidencies. I expect there will be some progress made as far as identifying focal points there for different constituencies. We are looking forward to meeting the focal points from the COP26 team who will be working on local governments and who should eventually take over our role in collaborating directly with the LGMA constituency. So we're looking forward to making those contacts. Then at the beginning of next week, there will also be a Marrakesh Partnership Strategy and Planning meeting in London in order to start to delineate what the priorities for the Marrakesh Partnership will be in the coming years, as it's been extended to 2025 is another major result, as Yunus mentioned, of the COP25. There will also be a collaborative event between the COP25 and COP26 presidencies in April. This is something that I'm putting on the map, on the radar. It's yet to be determined and defined, but it's also something that will be discussed during these meetings that are taking place now, this and next week in London, where we also hope to be able to instill a focus or at least a strong showing of collaboration with local governments at that event. Obviously, in June, the UNFCCC Intersessional Climate Conference in Bonn, which now, as Yunus has mentioned, will also be coinciding with the Daring Cities event, which will definitely be something to look forward for and look forward to hopefully be able to contribute and collaborate in that as well as a COP25 presidency. Moving on into September with the UN Climate Action Summit, which will be at the same time as the Nature Summit in New York. So that will obviously be an important moment to kind of look towards progress that has been made in the context of the Climate Ambition Alliance throughout the year in the run-up to the COP26 conference. Another opportunity for that will be during the pre-COP in October in Milan, which will also be coinciding, interestingly, with the biodiversity COP15 in Kunming in China. As Yunus mentioned, this connection between the biodiversity COP and the climate COP is something that is of interest to the COP25 presidency. We're exploring an opportunity to perhaps be able to contribute to this kind of joint work that has been done between these two spaces, both from Chile and also eventually possibly from the presidency supporting the work that's being done in Kunming. And all of this obviously culminating right with the COP26 in Glasgow, which there's a lot of expectations for this COP, and we know that the COP26 UK presidency has a lot on their shoulders. There's a lot riding on this COP26, so we will be continuing to explore the ways in which we can support the COP26 UK presidency by providing this kind of continuity regarding the progress made in order to assure that there's significant results that can be presented during the COP26 in Glasgow. So that's more or less what I had to present for now in the context of this presentation. Again, Yunus, I also wanted to just highlight the very positive experience that we've had throughout last year working together with you in the LGMA constituency. We really do believe that it's important to have this kind of solid relationship where we have regular contact and regular collaboration, and that shows, from these kind of results that we have been able to achieve through this close collaboration. And it's been a real pleasure getting to know you and getting to know the work of the constituency. And we look forward to continuing this collaboration this year during the Chilean COP presidency. So thank you.
Thank you, Jordan, for this really insightful presentation, especially also your last session in terms of your kind words to our collaboration. It's really good to have this mutual understanding and spirit. I was also very happy to listen to your presentation and seeing how complementarity the global and the regional agendas are advancing. And I think this is really the moment to make sure the synergy and the synchronization works very well. And as you mentioned, hopefully we will be more continuing to this process and hopefully connect to the COP26 teams, and we will make sure results are delivered in time and to make COP26 a success. Ladies and gentlemen, you have listened to very intense presentations from both me and Jordan. Many thanks for your patience. We can be flexible in terms of some question and answers if needed. You can raise your hands, you can type your questions, we can unmute you if you want. Yeah, the floor is yours. As of now, I don't see too many or none, let's say, in terms of raising hands or asking questions. Which I think for the time being would be okay. In particular, as we said, what we presented here is more like a refreshment of our memories and to assure all the partners that we are advancing what we have announced and in Madrid COP25, both from the presidency side and also from LGMA side. I think the next round will be much more interesting when we hear more from the presidency of COP26 about their priorities. As you have seen, having a focal point in the presidency on local and subnational leaders was a huge asset, and we hope COP26 presidency can continue to do that practice. Would be one of our expectations, obviously, but very likely in the March presentation or webinars, we may have much more substantive discussion in terms of how to reach to our goals or the destinations in Glasgow and beyond. With this, if there's no questions, we can conclude this session. As we said, this will be available online. I think it was really a very nice capturing. We would coordinate with Jordan that these two presentations are merged so that you can download only one document. We will keep updated in terms of the outcomes through LGMA regular lists, mailing lists. Feel free to join us. And with that, Jordan, any concluding remarks?
No, I think, as you say, Yunus, this is maybe just kind of getting things started for this year. As you mentioned, there's still a lot to be determined as far as the COP26, which is starting to now, as it's recently been given a presidency or a president rather, to get its team sorted. So I think as well in March we'll probably be able to come back with maybe some more substantial progress. But I do think that this was an interesting, at least, way to kind of recap and also start to look forward to 2020.
Excellent. Jordan and all the colleagues, participants, we all wish you the best of success in your agendas for today and tonight and the days ahead. And let's continue to stay in close dialogue. So bye-bye, and thank you all for your participation.
Thank you, Yunus, and bye to all.